I did try recording a video and got discouraged like halfway through, realizing, oh yeah, no one's gonna see this. But I'm doing it again anyways. So I did make some progress on it. And so I came up with trying to make sort of an outline. I'm terrible at making outlines and I haven't really put any events in this so far. So far, what I have done is analyze that, the story has to start off on the ship, coming into view of the planet. Okay? Like a bit of a life on the ship to get an idea what kind of condition they were in. So, the story so far is that they were in cryogenic pods, but whatever life support they had was fading, or at least the systems they had for the cryogenic pods was fading. So, they had to awake from slumber. And by the way, the little note of robots, it's like autonomous machines were maintaining the ship the entire time they were asleep. Okay? Now, they're on the verge of dying. They've spent 3 years on the ship, the maximum amount of time that they expect to have someone out of cryogenic sleep, or else they get tap into resources they're going to need for going to the planet. So I guess they're not on the verge of dying. It's just, I guess maybe some air filters or whatever they have to keep oxygen flowing might wear out in that time, but whatever. And I decided that it doesn't make sense to colonize a world with a whole bunch of old people. Just to be fair, who are you going to pick for a colony mission? A 20-year-old in his prime, or 40-year-old with a whole bunch of health problems, or has, let's say, not the best build or mindset to explore something new. Because their brains developed, and whoever they're going to be, is who they're going to be. They're not going to just adjust to somewhere else. And it's like, so, picking a young age, and it's not like they're not going to get homesick or anything, but they picked a young age, let's say 15 to 25, with the exception of, let's say, a few hundred people and their families. So, say probably about, I was deciding like around 250,000 people are on this ship. Really big ship. And let's say about 500. Nah, that's a bit too low. Let's say about 1,000 or 2,000 of them are made up of families and people over 40 or younger than 14. Okay, so on this, I was making a main character, John Matthias. If anyone comes across this video and feels they have a better name in mind, then I welcome them to do so. And I should silence my background real quick, because I don't think I get it. Okay, so I made a physical appearance. That's literally not important, but I personally like the ability to have to describe them if they looked into the mirror or something. By the way, I decided I was going to write it in first person, so to say. There might be better outlets for this, like writing in third person in a god perspective, or third person in a following a specific character. And just there's a few ways to go. This would be interesting is to write a story in second person, but I just feel that would get a bit confusing down the line, or it'd be weird. And I don't want to write a story where it focuses around the reader. Really, really not. So, didn't labeled it character traits. Don't really feel like they're traits, but more like personality things. So, I decided, let's just skip over this real quick. So, I wanted to give him a background. I didn't fully give a background that was the detail about like where he came from back on Earth. Let's say he started off at the youngest age of people who were selected. 14. Okay? Now, let's just say back home, I didn't write this in yet, his father was a World League, can come up with a better name later, whatever this is, a World League soldier, so he would deal with international crimes and stuff like that. So, international police. Okay? And as I said, this is an alternate world. So, moving on, he's 14. He's on his own. He's not even with his family. He's in a culture where, like, 14, 15, that's adulthood. You're able to make your own decisions, which is not something we would find normal, but 14, 15, you are a man. Now, yeah, but like 18 is still like a true adulthood. Like, for example, like how we have certain things that you're technically 18, you're old enough to do whatever you want, or get a job, or just live for society, but you have to be 21, or in some nations 20, some it's even less than that, to drink. And I believe, for example, smoking is another thing that you have to be older than 18. Like, you don't have to be older than 18 to smoke. You have to be older than 18 to buy cigarettes. I know for sure that that is the case in Utah, at least. I believe that's true. But whatever. So let's say like 18 is the expectation where you'd be like drinking or doing things that are inappropriate and stuff like that. 15, 14, you're just at the age where you're old enough to have a job and work and fill out the expectations of society. In a way, you're still seen as a kid, but you can hold more responsibilities and you can actually move on to what people actually expect you to do in your life. And yeah, I don't know how heavy that's going to be in the story, but need to write it in, so cool. So, while he's on this ship, one of the few people who are like older than 25 is this ex-soldier slash politician. Right here, in notes right here. I didn't fully give out details for this character. I don't really know how I'm going to make them yet. But, so, this person is like a natural leader. They are inspiring. They are a go-getter. They take action. They do what they think is necessary. They don't hesitate. They may have what is like a strong moral compass, really. Not necessarily a strong moral compass, but a very restricted way of looking at the world. And to them, they are just a natural leader, as I said. So this leads to, I don't know, I said goal, but it might be better to be inspired to be, or yeah. So they're inspired to be that of a leader in a way. They want to take charge. They want to be like this person. They always take on situations on the ship for the past 3 years. They require them to be that. And their job while they're on the station, which leads into the robots that I was mentioning. Um, it would make sense that someone whose military background or was chosen for key reasons like either intellect or stuff like that would take part in this. And not to say I'm not going to have a few randos or people like they might have this confusing selection process or whatever that we write into the story later. But right now we're going to assume if we're going for something realistic, like we would pick someone with the training, the know-how, and the willingness to follow orders to take on this role. So we're kind of molding him to be the leader, and I might not make him the leader of whatever group forms of this, just to write him being bitter a lot. Just to have him deal with not being the focus or not being the best or things like that. And so his job was to police the spaceship. Okay? So essentially, he wasn't that well liked. And it's not necessarily uncommon nowadays. Like, some people trust police, some people don't, and there are reasons for either. Like, but the police in this, they do things people don't necessarily like, because they're in cramped quarters, like working on limited resources, and now they have these people who have to basically tell them what to do or keep them from doing certain things just to ensure that the rest of them survive. So, in my imagination, um, this is where personality comes into play. I'd say with this experience, he hasn't seen the worst of the world. We're not going to write in a story where he's just seen these people act awful, terrible, and just there might be a few people, but he hasn't seen the worst of it. Because it's only been 3 years. It's not enough to just get crime to go rampant. They didn't pick just random criminals. They might have picked a few, to be honest and fair. But they didn't just isn't Australia. They didn't just take a whole bunch of unwanteds and just throw them off into the God knows where. Okay? So I feel though he has the weight of responsibility. And with that, he knows people aren't going to necessarily like him for doing his job. So he's grown a bit cold or distant. And with that in mind, it's going to be interesting to deal with him, like, probably interacting with, let's say, to be honest, I've just found out that it's probably going to be lazy story writing, but I've been talking to someone on the bus during my earlier years of high school, and to be honest, the truth be told, no one reads a story or watches a movie or sees a TV series just because they like the story. They have ships they're obsessed with. And to be honest, it might be interesting to deal with having a character that has a crush on them or something like that, and watching how they deal with it. Now, I don't know what kind of story this is. I'm pretty sure it's not a romance story. But it'd be an interesting topic. Or at least interesting to me. And I have no clue how to write that. I've never dealt with anything at all. I have zero experience in that area. But whatever. And let's say, because of this, he's always had a sense of duty. He is loyal to his core, to his ideals, to whatever nation's gonna form when he gets there. He's loyal to his people, to everything. And to him, that probably makes him a bit judgmental. He doesn't like people who aren't like him necessarily, or can't respect. So, how do I put this? He's gonna be judgmental because he can't understand people are gonna have a differing view than him. He's distant from everyone, and he's very loyal to his cause. So anything that differs from that, even slightly, he might feel a bit persecuted by it, or feel the need to step in and be a bit judgmental. Now, with that in mind, he is, I feel deep down, would be kind character. I don't like writing about dicks. Let me rephrase that. I don't like writing about people who are jerks. Okay? It's not fun to me, and I don't think it's realistic. There are awful people in the world, but I think there's very few and far between people who do stuff for no reason, or have reasons and just do them anyways. I feel everyone has something in them that compels them to actually, like, care for others. So let's just say, like, as a boy, he was kind, and it's still something in him. He just has a lot on his shoulders right now. because he's somewhere he's never been before. He's been given responsibility at what we would consider a decently young age, right? Not like a super young age, but a decently young age. And he's dealing with the stress of people, hormones, and all this other stuff going on inside of him right now. But at his core, he's a kind person. He cares for others. And I need to hold on. Let me conservative definition. Holding traditional attitudes. Wow. Definition. Okay. Conservative. Holding traditional attitudes and values and cautious about change or innovation, typically in relationships or politics or religion. A person who's averse to change and holds traditional values and attitudes, typical in relations to politics. Now, I am personally a bit annoyed when people deal with the words conservative and liberal and treat it to two parties, because it's absurd and stupid. And I also hate it when they're like, oh, just because you're liberal, you're left or right. And I've met some very conservative, like, Democrats. I've met some liberal Republicans. I've met, like, I'm personally, in my view, a liberal with conservative policies, like, about the world. Okay? Which, because it's not as simple as, and if you probably can figure it out, or if not, I'm gonna get to the point. You're not as simple as one or the other. Everything's on a spectrum. Some people are very far to that section. Some people are very far left. And if you actually look at a political chart, it's not even two sides. It's like 4, sometimes 8. And you fall on an area of that spectrum. Some people are not as heavy in this area as another. So I'm not saying this character is a super conservative, they hold tradition to their heart and stuff like that, but I feel he's been raised in a conservative manner. Okay? With all of this stuff. He kind of holds true to his traditions. He doesn't really want things to change that much. But as time goes on, things do change, and he's going to have to draw the line what he feels. And I feel he is someone who's going to deal with change, who's going to adapt to it and let it, like, not just hold it back unless he feels it is entirely and morally wrong. But I feel he's a bit more conservative. He's a bit more reserved. He doesn't really want things to change. He wants things to mostly be the way they are, which in his mind is having. We needed to devise the leadership, so let's go back to brainstorming and let's say government. Now, I don't know a lot about governments. To be honest, I personally would prefer to write the story as to what I know, but I might change it to something if I do some research. Knowing me, I'm probably not going to do the research, but I might. I might have to for, like, a rival group or something, or just explore certain things. And I'm more of a philosophical guy than a political guy, so I might explore some philosophical terms of dealing with, you know. So, in this world, and in the ship, though, I would say it is mostly a democratic republic. And we might all think we know what a democratic republic is, which we probably do, but it's worth looking up. Democratic republic definition. Just to give a baseline, democratic rights are the rights that are necessary for the well-functioning democracy. Some people define them in a very in a very Spartan way, with the democratic rights being those around being able to vote and run for office in political parties, is that our freedom of religion does not strike me as a democrat. Okay, someone's view. What is the meaning of democratic right? No. Uh, None of this does not seem right. Oh, it's a democratic rights. I wanted republic. Democratic rights. Okay, let's click on Wikipedia. And democratic republic is a form of government operating on principles adopted by a republic and a democracy. Rather than being crossed between two entirely separate systems, democratic republics may function in principles shared by both republics and democrats. Theory. Common definitions of terms of democracy and republic often feature overlapping concerns, suggesting that they may democracies function as republics, and many republics operate as democratic principles, as shown by the definition, blah blah blah. A state in which supreme power is held by the people and their elected representatives. A system governed by the whole population or the eligible members of a state, typically through elected representatives. I got in a debate earlier about a democratic republic, and someone was arguing that um, they want a pure democracy, and in this definition, it kind of doesn't fit with what they want. They wanted a system without representatives, because they feel the people should be entirely in charge. And I don't feel that's the best way to go. We all know the people should be involved and make decisions in what happens to them. But at the same time, people are pretty stupid. Just to admit, people, and also people have their own lives. They don't have time to focus on all these things. This is why we have representatives and people who we put into positions of power to, in terms, represent our views. So in terms of what we really just discovered here, the Democratic Republic is literally just, let's just look at this again because my brain's blanking out, a state in which supreme power, so it might be better just to do a democracy here with what I'm doing. But no. Okay, Democratic Republic. So essentially both have elected officials. One has a supreme power, and the other has the people. And the combination of the two leads to voting and representation that I feel is a bit more fair in nature. It's not great and all, and I do believe it leads to a lot of problems, much as any other system can. But it's what we're using. Now, there's probably better terms for this, and we're going to structure it in our own way. But I'm just using this as a concept of what we're building around. So we're not going to necessarily inspire it off of. Actually, no. We're not going to inspire it off of the US or anything like that. We're going to have a council of elders. And let's see, is there a. What is a system run by. What is a system run by a council? List of forms of governments. We might find a better one in here. Anarchy. Wow, I really was not seeing that coming. Forms of government by power structure. No, we're not doing anarchy. Okay. So, quick notes. If you don't know what anarchy is, it's not chaos and all that necessarily. It is a lot of the time chaos. It is literally just the lack of a governing body. And anarchists believe that governments are bad for people. Like, they just abuse the people. They're not necessary. People should make their own decisions and all this stuff. We don't need someone governing us. We're not doing a confederation, because God knows if we actually wrote a story that was a realistic interpretation of a confederation, which the U.S. used to be, we know nothing would get done. Because one key thing about a confederation, if I remember properly, is everything has to be completely on equal ground. They have to all agree. So a confederation, also known as confederacy or league, is a union of sovereign states united by the purpose of a common action, often in relation to other states, usually created by a treaty. Confederation of states tend to be established for dealing with critical issues such as defense, foreign relations, internal trading, and currency with the general government, being required to provide support for all its members. And federalism represents a main form of intergovernment and is being defined as any form of interaction between states which takes place on the basis of sovereign independence or government. Confederation is almost a federation, with federal government being as a combination of alliance of all the states. So, with that in mind, it's saying it has to be completely equal with everything. And it is not what we're looking for, really. A federation, also known as a union partially self-governing states or regions under a central government. In a federation, self-governing status component states, such as division power between them and central government, is typically constitutionally. Alternatively, federation is a form of government in which sovereign power is formally divided between a central authority and a number of constituent regions, so each region retains some degree of control over its internal affairs. That might be an interesting path to go. Actually, I feel it's a bit more realistic. A unitary state is a state governed by a single power in which a central government, ultimately supreme by administrative division, subnational units, exercise only its powers when central government chooses to delegate. The majority of states in the world have a unitary state. Okay. We're not doing anarchy or confederation. We can go into more details about a confederation and study it more, but from what I know about a confederation, it's not appealing. It's not appealing to me. It's not interesting to me. It's not something I would want to model a nation after. And some of the things I want to do here is, what would I consider to be a decently running state? Now, I'm obviously not in a position to argue what a decently running state is, but a federation or power structure of a federation or unitary state can be interesting. The problem is, with a federation, with how it's divided up, in arguments, we could talk about something like how the U.S. set up. It's technically that, essentially. We could result in multiple powers, states of authority, vying for control that originate from these areas. So things might not get done as time progresses on in the story, such as we have Democrats and Republicans in the U.S. bickering over things constantly, and nothing gets done because it goes back and forth, and one undoes what the other does, and we can't decide on a path to go. And everyone says the world's ending because this person gets into power, and it's just a bunch of nonsense, and yeah. But with a unitary state, the debate is also, is there like real freedom there? Because a lot of it's just what the government says. And as problematic as it might be, I have to just go with the Federation. So, we'll deal with so leadership and power structure or internal structure. Okay, and with that, we are going with a federation. I wish this stopped happening to me. Okay, federation. And, okay. So, a power structure, power source. I don't necessarily know what this means. An autocracy. Autocracy is a system of government in which supreme power, social and political, is centralized in the hands of one person or polity, whose decisions are subject to neither external legal restraints nor regularized mechanisms of popular control. Absolute monarchy, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, Brunei, and Eswatini, and dictatorships, also included North Korea, are the main modern-day forms of autocracy. Now, that might be a route that we could go, and it might actually be interesting. But it's not a good route to start. Or maybe it's the perfect route to start. As far as we know, one person might just try to rise to power at the beginning, or it could be very civil when they get into the planet. And in fact, I haven't even debated how, but we're going to do a council of elders. Not elders, just a council. And it's going to probably come down to a democracy. Democracy, meaning rule of the people, is a system of government in which citizens exercise power directly or elect representatives from among themselves to form a governing body, such as parliament. Democracy is sometimes referred to as rule of the majority. Democracy is a system processing conflict in which outcomes depend on the participants' due, but not a single force controls what occurs and the outcomes. This includes citizens being able to vote for different laws and leaders. Now, before we fully make our decision, let's read what an oligarchy is. Oligarchy meaning rule of the few. It's a form of power structure in which power rests in a small number of people. These people might be distinguished by nobility, wealth, family ties, education, corporate, religious, or military control, such as states are often controlled by families who typically pass their influence from one generation to the next, but inheritance is not necessarily conditioned for application of this term. Yeah, I'd say it's, if we're going to go with power structure slash source etc, we are going to have, I feel a democracy is a good place to go. Types of democracy. Democracy is large portion of the population are provided means either by make decisions or choose representatives. To make decisions, usually though not necessarily. See demarchy. This means is voting. Significant most vote-based democracies are political parties, which are a group of people with similar ideas in how a country or region should be governed. Different political parties have different ideas about how the government should handle different parties' problems. Wow. And as you can see, there is a lot of democracies. Now, I might just edit this out or leave it in there. Variant of democracy, which the state is governed by randomly selected decision makers who have been selected by assortion or from broadly inclusive pool of eligible citizens. These groups sometimes termed policy juries, citizen juries, or consensus conference deliberately make decisions about public policies in much the same way that juries decide criminal cases. Democracies, in theory, could overcome some of the functional problems of conventional representative democracy, which is widely subject to manipulation by special interests and division between professional policymakers, politicians, and lobbyists, versus a largely passive, uninvolved, or often uninformed electorate. According to Australian philosopher John Burnham, random selection of policymakers would make it easier for everyday citizens to meaningfully participate and harder for special interests to corrupt process. More generally, random selections or decision makers from larger groups is known as sortions, from Latin base for lottery. Athenian democracy made much use of sortion, with nearly all government offices filling by lottery. of full citizens rather than by elections. Candidates were almost always male, Greek-educated citizens holding a minimum wealth and status. That there's problems there, but that might be interesting to deal with because I said we're dealing with a council, and how do we make the council fair? Well, we could just have everyone voted in, but maybe nothing will get done that way. Maybe the best thing to do is they just had a random lottery with who was the best options at the time, and they just rolled with it. Direct democracy. Variant of democracy, government in which people represent themselves and vote directly for new laws and public policy. Now, I'm not going that direction whatsoever. I feel that leads to way many more problems than anything else on this list can have. Because again, as society evolves, people don't have time to just vote on every little thing. You know how many laws get passed through the government? Probably way more than you know about. Like, not even laws, but just bills and stuff like that. And there's just so much to just go over. People are going to have to be completely aware about what's going on in the world around them. And some people just don't have the luxury, either because they don't have the time, the money, the resources. And people are going to put more effort to manipulate the public in this way, in my opinion. And people might argue that that's not the case, but I'm like, in that case, yes, you would. Because if you can get a majority vote to go one way, you win. You would do everything in your power to manipulate the people. And because there's no representatives, but I feel people would still form parties, regardless of this. So let's move on. Electrocracy. Sorry for butchering that. Variant of democracy, a form of representative democracy where citizens are able to vote for their government but cannot participate directly in governmental decisions making, where the government does not share any power, almost as the government has absolute power. Now, I feel that would lead to anarchy almost immediately. This is not good for our story. Liberal democracy. Now, I feel like someone's gonna get angry because people just hate the word liberal nowadays. Variant of democracy, a form of government in which representative democracy operates under the principles of liberalism. It is characterized as fair, free, competitive elections between multiple distinct political parties, a separation of powers into different branches of government, the rule of law, everyday life as part of an open society, and protection of human rights, civil liberties for all persons. To define the system in practice, liberal democracies often draw upon constitution, either formally written by uncodified or delineate the powers of government to enshrine the social contract after a period of sustained expansion. Throughout the 20th century, liberal democracy became predominant political system in the world. Liberal democracy may vary as constitutional forms, and it may be a republic such as France, Germany, India, Ireland, Italy, or the United States, or a constitutional monarchy such as Japan or Spain. It may be presidential system, Colombia, Brazil, Mexico, or the United States, or semi-presidential system, France or Portugal, or parliamentary system, Australia, Canada, Germany, Ireland, India, Italy, New Zealand. Now, this, I personally feel, might be something that would happen later on down the line. But let's be clear here. They're on a spaceship. They don't know how long they're going to be drifting. They don't know if they're going to even survive. Let's say they did try to make it fair and vote. But in the end, the power is going to be centralized in this case. So, as much as I did say we're not going to do an electrocracy, we need something a bit more centralized. A liquid democracy. Variant of democracy, government in which people represent themselves or choose a temporary delegate, their vote or to another voter, or to vote for new laws or public policy. That actually would be an interesting system. Picture that. You have the ability, you have full control over your vote. But you can decide, this person makes the decision for me, but you don't have to. Now moving on. Representative democracy. Variant of democracy, wherein the people or citizens of the country elect representatives to create and implement public policy in the place of active participation by the people. Now, this is probably where we're going with this. I actually personally want to do the liquid democracy a bit in the actual story, and let's add a folder in here. New folder. This folder is gonna be thank you for doing whatever you did there. Edit. This is going to be wait, I already have it. Okay. Story writing. I didn't realize I already had a writing folder, but I don't know what's in there, and it might not be important at all to what we're doing. So I'm going to say just it's on Wikipedia. I can find it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to remember to do that. Yeah, I'm going to remember what exactly I looked up. So I'm going to do that. Social democracy. A variant of democracy, a social democracy rejects the either-or phobiocratic polarization interpretation of capitalism versus socialism. It claims that fostering a progressive evolution of capitalism will gradually result in evolution of capitalist economy into socialist economy. Social democracy argues that all citizens should be legally entitled to certain social rights. These are made up of universal access to public services such as education, healthcare workers, compensation, public transportation, and other service including childcare and care for elderly. Social democracy is connected with the trade union labor movement. It supports collective bargaining rights for workers. Contemporary social democracy advocates freedom from discrimination based on differences of ability, disability, age, ethnicity, sex, gender. I feel that's a bit redundant, but whatever. Language, race, religion, sexual orientation, and social class. Now, I feel people would get angry with me. We're not doing the Soviet democracy. Just real quick, I'm going to pass over that. I have no clue what that's going to be like. But I personally think that this is one of the better democracies out there. And it's not that it's that you can't have unregulated capitalism. If you want to look at what unregulated capitalism looks like, look back in the past at the United States. We had unregulated capitalism. In fact, I think some of our founding fathers didn't want something like that. They didn't want people to just build up businesses and just take over everything, just, you know. With this, it kind of holds companies and the rich more accountable and let the people be more comfortable in their own skin and live their lives. Because if something goes wrong, let's say a lot of people have this problem. If something goes wrong, they're worried about going to the hospital or certain things because it's expensive. But if the government is covering for this and not wasting money on useless things, it's helpful. It's something that you don't have to worry about. Now, it's not the best system that could ever be made, and I guarantee there's a decent amount of people out there who are just going to hate it because it's socialism. But it is essentially just democracy, but with the protection of people's basic human rights. Not declaring that they're protecting them, they are protecting them. They actually have resources out there. They require this to be a thing to protect people's basic human rights. Now, I'm probably, if you might not be as curious as me, but I'm very curious about the Soviet democracy. A variant of democracy, the citizens of governing by directly elected council. The council is directly responsible for the electors and are bound by their instructions, such as imperative mandate as contrast to a free mandate, in which the elected delegates are only responsible for their conscience. Delegates may accordingly be dismissed from their post at any time or be voted out. Now, we are going for council, but we're not going for this. None of these said we couldn't have a council. It's just this was the only one that really directly said it. Now, we're not going for this because we're not in a situation where people can just say no or want to just say no. Totalitarian. Don't know what a totalitarian system is. Yeah, let's just move on. We're not using the oligarchy. We're not using an autocracy. Regardless of the form of government, the actual governance may be influenced by sectors with political power, which are not part of the formal government. These are terms that highlight the actions of the government, such as corruption, demagoguery, sorry if I can't say that word, or fear-mongering that may disrupt the intended way of working of the government if they are widespread enough. So, if you didn't know, a banana republic is... I don't fully remember what a banana republic is, but if you didn't know, a banana republic is a form of corrupt kind of government system. It's not just a swanky little store that you know. So let's learn what a banana republic is. It's not going to be a banana republic, just so you know. I don't think it's going to even be possible for it to be a banana republic. A politically unstable, kleptocratic government that economically depends upon the exports of a limited resource, fruits, minerals, and usually features a society composed of stratified social classes such as great, impoverished, aristocracy, and a ruling plutocracy, composed of aristocracy or business politics and the military. In political science, the term banana republic denotes a country dependent upon limited primary sector production, which is ruled by plutocracy, who exploits the nation's economy by means of political economic oligarchy. In American literature, the term banana republic originally denoted the fictional Republic of Manchuria, a servile dictatorship that abated supported for kickbacks and exploitation of large-scale plantation agriculture, especially banana cultivation. In U.S. politics, the term banana republic is a pejorative political descriptor coined by the American writer O. Henry in Cabbages and Kings, a book thematically related to short stories derived from 1896 to 1897. Residents of Honduras, where he was hiding from the U.S. law for bank embezzlement. These are all the downsides to governments. So, bankocracy, excessive power and influence of banks and other financial authorities, which again, not something that's going to happen in this, at least not for a while. Corporatocracy, rule of corporations, barely building up a country, not going to happen. Or, like, at least, it's on another world, okay? They're far away. They're not going to be restricted by old world banks and stuff like that. It's not like, on its businesses yet. They're going to be built up. It's not like they just sent a whole bunch of freaking businessmen in suits saying, we're going to protect this brand, or we're going to have to collect. It's just not going to happen. Kakistocracy. I'm terrible with these names. Rule by the stupid. The system of governments where the worst or least qualified citizens not going to happen again. Or might happen, but not for a while. I feel they picked people who had reasonable intelligence. I'm going to check something real quick. Bit on the long side today. So, neptocracy, rule by nephews, favoritism granted by relatives regardless of merit. Might happen, but I feel because we're going with a democratic republic, we are not going to fall to that. So, orchiocracy, rule by the crowd, system government where mob rule is government by mob or mass of people, or the intimidation of legitimate authorities. As a derivative of majoritivism, it is akin to the Latin phrase mobile vulgus, meaning the fickle crowd, from which the English term mob was originally derived in the 1680s. Ochlocratic governments are often a democracy spoiled by demagoguery, tyranny of the majority, and the rule of passion over reason. Such governments can be as oppressive as autocratic tyrants. Ochlocracy is a synonym in meaning the usage of the modern informal mobocracy. Other attributes. Um, yeah. Now, we're on to the part that kind of matters to building a nation, I feel. It is the ideology, the stance, yeah. And I don't know why constitutional is here, because you can have constitutional monarchy, constitutional republic, whatever, but it's there. And we're going to have a constitutional republic. Is that a right term? I don't know. Constitutional government is a government in which powers are limited by a constitution. Constitution is normally used so the people of that government has civil and ethical rights. Doesn't exist yet, but will pop into existence eventually in the story. Now, we all know what a monarchy. It is one ruler and a dynasty who represents the whole nation. They're the head of everything. They get to make full decisions. And for what do they have? Barons, the stuff, just, you know. A republic, a form of government in which the country is considered a public matter, not the private concern of or property of the rulers. The primary position of power within a republic, and not inherited, but the attended through elections expressing the consent of the governed. Such leadership positions are therefore expected to fairly represent the citizens' body. It is the form of government under which the head of the states is not a monarch. American English, the definition of a republic can also refer to specifically to a government in which elected individuals represent the citizens' body, known as elsewhere as a representative democracy, a democratic republic, and exercise power according to the rule of law, constitutional republic. We already have in the notes a democratic republic. Yeah. And we're doing a federation structure. Federalist, whatever. Types of monarchy. We don't need a type of monarchy. Actually, I feel maybe evolving into a monarchy might be interesting. Doesn't usually happen. I don't feel it usually happens, at least. It feels like a step backwards, you know? But France did it, so. Types of republic. Rule by form of government in which the people of some significant. Okay, why am I reading this again? Let's read federal republic. Republics that are federation of states, provinces, where there is a national federal law encompassing the nation as a whole, but where each state or province is free to legislate and enforce its own laws, affairs so long as they don't conflict with federal law. Some exclude the United States. Okay, constitutional republics where there is rule government whose powers are limited by the law of formal constitution. Official document expounds, blah blah blah, and chosen by a vote amongst the populace. Typically, laws cannot be passed and violate constitutions unless the constitution itself is altered by law. This theoretically serves to protect minority groups from being subjected to tyranny of majority or mob rule. That must include the United States, South Africa, and republics where the laws are ultimately decided by popular vote, whether by body of elected representatives or directly by the public, and there is no restriction in which laws are passed so long as they have majority support. Constitutional law is either non-existent or possess little obstacle to legislation. So, um, as you can tell, a mix of these are kind of important. We're not doing parliamentary. We're not doing presidential. Actually, let's read a People's Republic. Republics that include countries like China, Vietnam. Oh, it's just communism. Okay, I can't believe I forgot that. As you can tell, I'm swinging for these three. So, constitutional, federal, democratic. So, where it's a democratic constitutional federal republic, or just let's just say it's democratic republic, um, whose power structure and power source, it's a federation. It's a republic, federation, stuff like that. Now, how we're going to have the elected officials. Let's read through this some more. Socioeconomic attributes. Runs a government by social anarchism, capitalism. Um, Socialism, a system in which workers democratically or socially own the means of production. Economic framework may be decentralized and self-managed in autonomous economic units as a libertarian system, essentially planned as an authoritarian system. Public services such as healthcare and education would be commonly collectively in state-owned and or state-owned. Ooh, tribalism. System based on small, complex society of varying degrees of centralizations that led by individuals known as a chief. So, we are going for a system that kind of protects the people. No, maybe not. We're going to do capitalism. Let's read what capitalism is, just in case you don't have the full definition. Are owned by a private individuals, work them, negotiate with those of individuals to use those means of production in exchange for a portion of what they produce, usually in form of capital, money. The owners of the means of production are entitled to whatever portion of the products of the workers' labor is agreed upon by the two parties. So in other words, you work for me, you get something, I get something. Yeah, let's go with capitalism. I know I don't understand people who are like, capitalism's the most evil thing in the world. I get unregulated capitalism can be bad. It's nowhere near like the worst system you could have. There's literally systems where all the wealth is collected in one spot. Not to say this isn't the situation now, but I mean, like, you can't own anything. This is what I mean by it. You physically can't own anything. So, yeah, socioeconomics. Capitalism. So leadership will be decided in a council. Well, there's something else we need to look on this. Geocultural attributes: national government, city-state, commune, world government. Okay, intergovernmental organization, also known as international governmental organization. This type of organization, most closely associated with the term international organization, is organizations that are made primarily of sovereign states, referred to as member states, and notable examples include United Nations. Okay. And we move on. And we've gotten to the bottom of the list. Theoretical speculative attributes, corporate republic, cyberocracy, theoretical form of government that rules by the effective use of information, magocracy, uniocracy. Okay, we're done with you. Let's check again. Wow. I feel like I've been talking a lot. So it's going to be ruled by a council. This council is going to be elected officials, obviously. Now, I feel it might not effectively align with some of these things, but ultimately, no one's planning on kicking them out of power. They're not gonna like swap or trade or anything like that right now because it's like they were put there in an emergency and they're probably gonna gain power when they get onto the world. So for life? Question mark. Because we don't know how things are gonna play out. Well, we are gonna know how things are gonna play out, but we in a debate, like, you don't know how things are going to play out. So arguments, they're not there temporarily. They're there for life because they don't know how long life's going to last. At any moment, they could just crash into something big and it all ends, you know? And for that sake, it's for life. Actually, I don't know how it's going to be a federation. Huh. Probably figure that out later. So, let's say I'd say that's a good stopping point for